NHS unions in England back a new pay deal, but the strikes are still not over. More than 1 million healthcare staff from 14 unions will get a 5% rise. Good news, says the government, but the RCN and Unite disagree.
It's a good day for NHS staff, but it's also a good day for patients.
Our message at the Staff Council today was that these proposals have to be rejected.
It could have been a line in the sand today after months of disruption, but there could now be even more strike action into the autumn. Robert will join us, though, to tell us why it's by no means a foregone conclusion, also tonight. The nurse accused of murdering 7 babies weeps in court as she gives her first evidence. 4 days before the coronation, a security alert at Buckingham Palace. A man's arrested and police carry out a controlled explosion. The agonising and impossible dilemma: how to support the abandoned women of Afghanistan in the face of an immovable Taliban.
When they shut down the schools, it made me ill, and I have gone through real depression since then. I think we are living in darkness.
And planting a new thought: how our gardens can be reshaped to withstand climate change.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. Through the long weeks of the NHS pay dispute in England, unions have, for the most part, stood together in their strikes for better pay. Today, there was a parting of ways. 12 of the 14 health unions affected by new contracts have now agreed to the government's offer of a one-off payment for last year and a 5% rise for this year. The 2 others, Unite and the Royal College of Nursing, did not. The RCN isn't just threatening to extend its strike action, but to step it up. It'll ballot more than 250,000 nurses about striking up to Christmas, not just in half the NHS trust in England as now, but in all of them.
For months, NHS staff have been on picket lines through the winter, now into the spring. Today, in what appears to be a huge step forward, the majority of NHS unions have approved the government's latest pay offer, which the Health Secretary has described as a success.
It's a good day for NHS staff, but it's also a good day for patients. It will allow us to move forward. Now the NHS Staff Council has ratified this deal. It's been accepted by the majority of the NHS Staff Council, and we can now move forward, focus together on patients.
The government's offer is for a 5% pay rise for all staff other than doctors and dentists, and a one-off payment of at least £1,655. The majority of the 14 NHS unions have approved, with more than 1 million NHS staff to benefit. The unions who were supportive almost seemed reluctantly so.
It's a relief for staff knowing that they get some of the money that they deserve. Is it everything that people would have wanted or people deserve? Absolutely not.
But Unite, who represent mainly ambulance workers and junior health staff, and the Royal College of Nursing, have voted against it. It means that although the pay offer will now go through, more strikes may follow.
We'll never be defeated.
That is in part due to concerns over working conditions, and while Unite have a mandate to keep walking out, the Royal College of Nursing intend on reballoting so they can. It appears we've reached somewhat of an impasse. The government says the negotiations are over, yet there are 2 unions saying they are willing to keep walking out until they have their demands met. At this stage, it's not clear when or if the 2 sides will even talk to each other, so we can't know for sure how long this could potentially go on for.
There is the possibility that the government imposes its proposals, but that's not going to stop us going forward. That's not going to stop us escalating the action.
For those like Andy, it is a serious concern. His cancer surgery was cancelled repeatedly due to strikes.
You cry because it's so emotional. You build up to the point where you can have your op, bang, you're knocked down again.
But regardless, he's supportive of those walking out.
I want them to have their pay rise and for the NHS to be great again.
With the government saying the negotiations are over and some unions saying they'll continue walkouts, this deadlock looks like it could go on for some time longer. Shihab Khan, News at 10, Westminster.
And Robert's here to talk us through what we've seen today and what we should be looking ahead to. So we've had sharp divisions between the government and the unions. Now we've got a situation where we've got division between the unions. Is that good news for the government? Where does that take us?
Well, it's obviously better for the government than we had, in the previous few weeks. But, health service is still in a mess. Government is still in a mess over this because the biggest nursing union, the Royal College of Nursing, representing 500,000 people, is currently preparing for another strike ballot. That will take place over a month, so we'll know probably by the end of June whether or not they are going to vote for another 6 months of strikes. Now, talking to people at the top of the union who recommended this pay deal, you remember, it was the members, the grassroots, who rejected it. They think there is a very strong likelihood that there will be another vote for strikes. And they say that nurses were incensed, for example, when Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, took their union to court to stop one day of strike only earlier this week. But the government is by no means out of the woods on this. Unite is still striking, and the junior doctors are still striking. So, yes, it's obviously better news that one bit of the health service is not going to be on strike for a while. But no, it's, the health service is still destabilised by all of this. And I've got one bit of slightly bad news for Steve Barclay. His people were telling me they thought that he'd be able to talk to the Royal College of Nursing quite soon about other issues about how to fix the health service. The Royal College of Nursing is saying to me, no chance of talking to the Health Secretary until he sorts pay.
OK. Robert, thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you. Now, for 7 months, a jury has heard the case against neonatal nurse Lucy Letby on trial for murdering 7 of her tiny patients. Today, it was time for her to take the witness box. During questioning from her own barrister, she cried when talking about her job, how she'd always wanted to work with children. She point-blank denied killing babies by injecting them with air. She said she only wanted to care for them, to do her best for them and to help them.
After 7 months of the prosecution talking about her, today it was Lucy Letby's chance to speak. In court, she calmly told the jury she didn't harm any babies and at times broke down when asked about how her life has changed now. She's charged with 7 counts of murder and 10 counts of attempted murder, and today told the jury how the allegations have made her feel. She said, "It was sickening. I just could not believe it. It was devastating. I don't think you could be accused of anything worse than that." She said, "I have always prided myself on being very competent, and potentially I was not competent. It really affected me, and I was taken away from the job I loved." But a job the prosecution claims she used to inject air into babies' bloodstreams or milk into their stomachs, something she was arrested for in 2018, a time when police also found this post-it note in her home where she wrote, "I'm evil, I did this." When asked in court today why she did that, Miss Letby said, "Because I felt at the time I had done something wrong, and I thought, I'm such an awful, evil person that I had made mistakes and not known." There really is no denying just how significant today has been. It's taken 7 months before the defence could start, and until this point the jury have only heard what the prosecution believe Miss Letby did. But today it was her turn, which she used to look directly at the jury and tell them she's never injected air into any baby. She also told them she's never physically assaulted any child in her care, and she told them that this trial has changed her life. The defence also told the jury how the hospital had at times taken on babies with complex needs, which Miss Letby said they wouldn't usually care for on the neonatal unit. She also described how there was no formal support for staff and said she would often rely on her colleagues or her parents, who've been here almost every day since the trial started, but were finally able to hear their own daughter's account described in court today, where she repeatedly denied the 22 charges she faces and told the jury all she wanted to do was care for the babies she was looking after and to do her best for them. Sangeeta Lal, News at 10, Manchester.
4 days out from the coronation, just about the last thing Scotland Yard wanted, of course, was a security alert at Buckingham Palace. A man was arrested this evening after throwing what police believe were shotgun cartridges into the palace grounds. Rebecca's there for us tonight. Good evening to you, Rebecca. What more are the police saying?
Well, we understand that King Charles was at Buckingham Palace earlier to meet the Australian Prime Minister, but we understand he was not in the building when this happened. This is as close as we can get because of the cordon that's in place. We can show you footage which appears to show a man being arrested outside the palace. At around 7 o'clock this evening, a man threw suspected gun cartridges into the palace grounds. Police say that they've since been recovered and will be taken for specialist examination. The man also had what police describe as a suspicious bag. Specialist officers were called in and a controlled explosion was carried out. We understand that was simply as a precaution. No reports of any shots being fired or anyone being injured. The man has been taken into custody, but of course this comes just days before the King's coronation. There's already a heavy security presence here in central London, and that will only ramp up as we approach Saturday with both armed and undercover police officers on high alert. That's in addition to the 7,000 troops who will be taking part in the ceremonial events.
OK, Rebecca, thank you. And as the King prepares for Saturday, he, like every monarch, hopes to protect the status of the crown in the life of our country and pass it on in a healthy state to the next generation. But King Charles looks to have a tough job on his hands from the outset, particularly among young people. Polling done for ITV News suggests that only a third of 18 to 24-year-olds want the monarchy to continue.
It's not just the River Dee that flows through Balmoral. It was at this castle that the royal line passed from Queen to King. The nearby village of Ballater has known many monarchs, quite personally, and here we found plenty of preparations for the new King's coronation.
It's taken us around 5 days. We're getting there, almost done.
This is our coronation sausage.
It's selling well?
They're selling very well.
Just as they held a ball for the Queen's coronation in 1953, they followed suit for the King in 2023. But 70 years on, Charles does not inherit a united kingdom. A poll of over 2,000 people for News at 10 found a deep generational divide. While 70% of over 65 support the monarchy, among the middle-aged it drops dramatically to 53%, and again to just 39% among the young, leaving the King relying on many of the Queen's generation.
He's had the longest apprenticeship in history, and the way he stepped up when the Queen passed away, it's just amazing.
I met him last week and he was so nice, you know, he just spoke to everybody.
He's been around and he knows how much his mum was loved, and I think we should let him know how much he's loved.
Perhaps in Ballater, but overall Scotland's support is the least assured of any UK nation. Once Prince, now King of Wales, Charles fares better here.
The Queen presents her son to the people, the 21st Prince of Wales.
But even in 1969, his investiture at Carnarvon Castle proved controversial. And so too will his coronation, met with a protest here in this Welsh-speaking heartland next Monday.
The event itself is quite obscene and just a display of wealth and privilege, which is totally irrelevant, we think, to the majority of people in Wales.
But his history is a big part of Wales's history. Is that not something to be celebrated?
We acknowledge that he has a history in Wales. It's debatable what his contribution has been to Welsh public life.
And how people rate Charles's personal performance once again depends on their age. 67% of the oldest people we polled think he'll be a good king. Among the middle-aged, it's only 52%, while just 38% of the young rate him highly. In Carnarvon, we found the King can't even count on all those who watched his investiture as children.
Has he come to Carnarvon again after that? No, he hasn't. I'm going to put the television off on that day.
You were at the investiture in '69. You were in.
I was in
the
there,
castle.
sat down.
Do you think he'd be a good king?
I think he's an excellent king already.
In our poll, that view is shared most often in England. This youth project in East London received the first joint visit by the new King and Queen.
As a joke, I said to her, "Can I get your number?" And it went a bit viral. And then I think I was told to write a letter to her, and they still stayed in touch with me. They still email me time to time to tell me how I'm doing, how's my life going.
This generation was born after Princess Diana died, but social media has given her story new life. And the young are the least likely to support not just the king, but also his queen. A slim majority of over 65 say Camilla will make a good queen. Among the middle-aged who grew up with Charles's marital dramas, it's 43%, and among the youngest, it's just 34%.
I'm not really so keen on Camilla, but I mean...
Why not?
I mean, I've heard so many things about her.
She gave me like a weird vibe. Like
weird vibe?
Yeah, like when I first met her. I respected her, but at the same time, I was like, ooh. Like if Princess Diana didn't die, I would meet Princess Diana, but I was meeting Camilla.
Charles and Camilla are unlikely to be the last king and queen that this generation know, though every monarch runs the risk of becoming the end of the royal line. Paul Brand, News at 10.
Well, the man leading the coronation service on Saturday, the Archbishop of Canterbury, was pretty relaxed about it when I spoke to him earlier today. Justin Welby batted away the only slight controversy this week, asking everyone watching to pledge allegiance to the King, saying it was an invitation to join in and not a command. As for whose idea it was, well, he said diplomatically he couldn't remember. I began by asking him whether he was nervous.
It's a busy few days, but in the end, it's about making sure that what happens on Saturday seeks to communicate all the good things we're trying to do in this extraordinary coronation.
The idea of the public homage, your invitation for people to pledge allegiance to the King, was it your idea?
The whole service was put together by a lot of people, and I can't honestly remember where that came from.
It's gone down pretty badly, hasn't it?
I mean, this isn't a command. It's to say anyone who would like to join in and feel part of this, join in it, is welcome to do so. And if people don't want to do so, that's entirely up to them.
It's also an exclusive and extremely expensive spectacle at a time of immense hardship for very many people. Do you feel a bit guilty about being part of that, Archbishop?
Not in the slightest. In times of hardship, the answer to that is not about everyone going around being totally miserable the whole time. It's finding ways of enabling people to support and help each other and draw together with their neighbours. The coronation in 1953, during a time of austerity post-war, was also a huge and wonderful ceremony. It's a party. Join in.
But at the heart of it, it is a Church of England sacred rite, and actually could alienate people who have no faith.
It will come back and back and back through the whole coronation is the theme of loving service. What people will see, regardless of their faith position, is they will see reflections of our tradition. They will see representations of who we are today as a nation, and they will see something that looks forward with hope.
What has it been like to work with the King on this project? I mean, you are one of the people who is seeing him at closest quarters at the biggest moment of his life.
It's been a huge privilege and honour. He listens immensely carefully. He is thoughtful and very conscious of what this means.
What has it been like for you personally? You're going to be a man of history at the coronation.
People will remember who King Charles III is. They will quickly forget who Justin Welby is.
It's always written in the history books.
It's not about me, it's about the nation and the realms and the Commonwealth and this opportunity for us in this service to speak round the world.
Archbishop Justin, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. And you can spend Coronation Day with us here on ITV on Saturday. Our coverage starts at 8:30 with all the build-up on ITV1, ITVX and, of course, STV. There will, after all, be one more day of RAF evacuation flights from Sudan tomorrow. Yesterday's flight had been scheduled to be the last. Tonight, the Foreign Office told any Britons still wanting to leave to make their way to a hotel in Port Sudan by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning local time. Another ceasefire is now scheduled to start on Thursday and last for a week. Now, while the world focuses on Sudan and getting people out, the United Nations is also trying to concentrate minds on what the Taliban is doing to its fellow Afghans. The rights of Afghan women are being eroded all the time. A UN-arranged summit today tried to address how to deal with the Taliban ban on women doing relief work in a country two-thirds dependent on urgent aid. It was almost 2 years ago, in August 2021, that the British and American forces pulled out of Afghanistan after almost 2 decades. Not long after that, the Taliban rose to power, overtaking the capital, Kabul, in days. The Taliban reassured the international community that women would be protected, but those rights quickly began to be stripped away. In March last year, girls were banned from secondary school and not long after that, from university. By May, women were forced to cover completely their faces, to stay at home and not leave without a male escort. Lives are being ruined, and so is what is left of the Afghan economy.
On the edge of the Afghan capital, the fasting of Ramadan has come to an end. But nothing has changed for Farida. The mother of 4 is still going without every day, preparing lunch for her children and then watching them eat without taking so much as a mouthful herself to make sure they don't go to bed hungry.
I may have eaten only 5 or 6 days in the last 15 days of Ramadan because we didn't have anything. And we only bought bread, and that too was hardly enough for the children.
50 million children are now reliant on aid, and it's not just their stomachs that are going unfed. Young minds are also being deprived by a regime determined to make the everyday sight of girls heading to school a thing of the past. This makeshift classroom is only operating because of UN support.
My favorite subject, English and geography. My ambition is to be a teacher in the future.
But there are barely any schools to teach in, and most women are now banned from working, just as the Afghan economy is on its knees.
It is exacerbating an already terrible humanitarian crisis, because if girls are not educated at the high school level and the university level, then where is the next generation of nurses and doctors and engineers and business leaders going to come from?
Instead, in the capital, women are invisible and poverty is everywhere. Gula used to support her family, but now has to rely on relatives abroad to get by.
Before the Taliban, 3 female members of my family worked. Now we are all jobless.
It's even harder for women like Atifa, trying to give her 5 daughters some kind of education.
When they shut down the schools, it made me ill, and I've gone through real depression since then. I think we are living in darkness.
Teenage Afsana can't even go to the park, talk to boys or share a picnic.
We are being kept at home like being in prison. We are being kept at home like birds in a cage.
The only nation in the world where instead of being allowed to spread their wings, girls are denied an education by a regime that no other country recognises, but no one seems able to stop. Rachel Younger, News at 10.
BP's profits in the first 3 months of the year dropped slightly as the oil price did the same, but they were still pretty sizable at nearly £4 billion, which was higher than the analysts had expected. Another chapter was written this evening in the footballing fairy tale of Wrexham Football Club. Fans mobbed 3 open-top buses carrying the men's and women's teams, both of which have won promotion, thanks, of course, to their celebrity owners. The Hollywood film stars Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds weren't going to miss out on the celebrations, were they?
Who needs the red carpet when you've got this sea of Wrexham red? Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney snubbed the Hollywood Met Gala for Wrexham city centre, and you can see why. An estimated 25,000 people lined the streets to celebrate their footballing heroes and the stars who made it happen.
Everywhere you go through the town, just walk through, it's red everywhere, it's brilliant.
I think it's just what we needed after COVID and all of that. We just feel so lucky.
It's a real pleasure to see what it brings for the club, for the team, for the people, the fans that have been supporting through thick and thin.
Rob and Ryan they've done marvellous. The place is buzzing.
It's been nearly 50 years since Wrexham's last victory parade through town. Tonight, new memories for a new generation of fans.
Just chanting on my hometown and everything, and just giving all my support to the club.
You'd think it was a parade for a Premier League club. A glance inside the now famous Turf pub and perhaps you'll understand why. Crowds flock here every day for a pint and a selfie. So you're hoping to get the one in Welsh, right? The black one?
Exactly.
Wrexham is now a global attraction. Weekend visitors from the States and day trippers from London are common. What is it about Wrexham that has drawn you here today?
Well, it's the people. I mean, certainly the documentary got me interested, but it's the people.
It was a record-breaking season for the men's and women's teams, but this story is about so much more than football. Wrexham faces challenges familiar to many post-industrial British cities, but there's a sense here now that on and off the pitch, brighter days are ahead. Rhys Williams, News at 10, Wrexham.
This story that keeps on giving now. Finally, every gardener knows that certain plants cope better than others with dry autumns, cold springs or too little sunshine. But now, as weather extremes become more frequent, those green-fingered gurus at the Royal Horticultural Society say gardeners should consider growing more robust plants that can cope with a combination of all of the above.
Spring has finally sprung, but gardeners are feeling the sting of the fast-changing British weather. Relentless heat and droughts giving way to downpours and a cold winter, leaving prized garden flowers and plants wilting.
Most of my plants from last year have withered. The camellia has done very well, but all the little shrubs and things have gone.
Outdoor plants, when I grow it outside, the weather affects, like when it's snowing or it's too cold, it will die and I have to buy it again. Yeah, so I like indoor plants than the outdoors.
It's disappointing when you spend a lot of money and then they die. Yes, yeah, but we just have to get used to it, I guess.
And it's fluctuations in weather that plants struggle with. And so far this year we've seen the driest February in England for 30 years, followed by the wettest March in decades, while April saw lower than average temperatures and severe wind warnings.
We'll also be looking at planting drought-resistant plants, things like lavenders and rosemary.
Such is the concern about extreme weather patterns, experts here at RHS Wisley are changing their vibrant blooms like these rhododendrons for hardier plants, with warnings we should do the same.
Is the traditional British garden going to be a thing of the past?
Well, British gardens tend to rely on things like lawns, and lawns will be more difficult to grow in hot summers. Some plants that are traditionally British and which we love very much, like roses, they're actually very resilient and they can cope with a great deal of heat and drought. But other plants like hollyhocks, for example, which are very much loved, they would not be as resilient under those conditions. Definitely be seeing more of the drought-resistant, heat-tolerant Mediterranean-type plants, or plants from Central Asia like the Afghan sage or Perovskia.
So planting more robust blooms for a changing climate will be essential, it seems, if British gardens of the future are to thrive. Sejal Karia, News at 10, Surrey.
And that is News at 10 for gardeners everywhere. We will see you tomorrow. Good night.